The BYU Cougars handle their business in Orlando, Florida, and as the Pop-Tarts Bowl hats and shirts say, they are the people's national champions. We're talking about it on a postcast edition of Locked On Cougars.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider, your host here on the show. And once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen in. Thank you for making us over here at the Locked On Podcast Network, America's #1 sports podcast network. All right, big win for BYU as they handle business in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, beating the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets 25-21 in comeback fashion. We're going to break it all down here on a postcast edition of the show. So let's dive right in. And I'll just say this right at the outset. If this is the final time we see BYU in this current iteration, speaking mainly of the coaching staff, Jay Hill and the like, what a way for them to go out, because I thought this game, especially defensively, the epitome of it was in the final stanza of this game. Remember, 4th and 15, Georgia Tech is down to their final down with about a minute to go, and Haynes King uncorks a 66-yard pitching catch to the wide receiver. I don't remember the wide receiver's name off the top of my head. And Evan Johnson was in pretty phenomenal position as a cornerback on that play. Tries to go up and deflect it. It goes right over his outstretched fingertips. They haul it in, and once again, a 66-yard pickup, and suddenly Georgia Tech has life breathed right into them with a chance to win the ball game in the red zone. 4 plays later, 4th and goal, 4th and 10 to go, Haynes King throws a ball on an out and up that Evan Johnson had obviously been waiting on. He sends his receiver over to the defensive end. I think in the case it was Logan Latui, and then he's in phenomenal position, undercuts the route, picks it off, seals the win for BYU. Those plays, essentially 4 plays apart from one another, 5 plays apart from one another, I think were indicative of everything I needed to see from BYU in this game, as it showed exactly what this BYU team is all about. Yeah, there are times they're going to get burned. It looks like they're down and out, and they're going to be in trouble. But much like they have most of the season outside of the 2 games against Texas Tech, BYU shows that they have got heart, they've got tenacity, they've got gumption, they've got grit, they've got every superlative you want to use, and they come out with another win, their first 12-win season, despite what the ESPN broadcast says. They said it was 2014. It was 2001, folks. Last time BYU won 12 games. 12-2, an incredible season, all things considered. Made a run to the Big 12 title game. Came oh so close to playing in the college football playoff, and I think things are looking up for BYU, quite honestly, even with the fact that they missed out on the playoff and didn't get the Big 12 title. Think about everything that they accomplished this year, and I think in its totality, and we'll continue to break this down on ensuing podcasts, but this shows that this BYU team, they've got some juice, and it was a really, really fun, thrilling game to watch, and I don't blame any of you guys who may have considered turning it off at one point in this game, because think of it, what happens. Haynes King gets the touchdown pass, and then on the ensuing kickoff, Cody Hagan muffs the kick. They recover it on the 5-yard line. 1 play later, they're back in the end zone, and suddenly it's 21-10 Georgia Tech as the first half is quickly drawing to a close. BYU tried to find points before halftime, couldn't do so, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, what do they got in store here? Could this be their final stand? Could they be capable of such a comeback? And throughout the entirety, essentially the third quarter, Georgia Tech really controlled the action in that. BYU had about a possession and a half in that entire third quarter, and Georgia Tech just kind of sitting on a 21-10 lead. To BYU's credit, Keanu Tanavasa blocks a field goal that obviously helped BYU get some juice. And then BYU puts together a drive, and they had never really struggled to move the ball in this game. Let's be very clear about this. BYU, before the fourth quarter, was 1 for 4 inside the 10-yard line, and that's a disappointing number. And I'm sure that Kalani Sitake, Aaron Roderick, et cetera, will point to that very thing, their inability to capitalize on opportunities in the red zone, particularly inside the 10-yard line. They their inability to do that, I think, was the glaringest of the glaring issues of not having LJ Martin in this game. You needed your battering ram at running back, or you needed a fully healthy Bear Bachmeier, who was clearly mobility-wise limited. He just couldn't run the same way he has run most of the season, especially after re-aggravating that left ankle injury on the first series. But I really do think that BYU showed a lot of what they're capable of in that fourth quarter, because they go down the field and Enoch Nawahine, seemingly out of nowhere, because let's be honest, BYU's running backs in this game had left a lot to be desired to that point, puts his hat down and just goes full battering ram mode and drives himself into the end zone, crosses the goal line. BYU gets the touchdown. Then they decided to go for 2, and there's no harm, no foul in that circumstance in going for 2, because the worst happens. You're down 5, you still need to score a touchdown. Best case scenario, you get it like Bear Bachmeier did. Really the only true, I thought, run of the day from him in that circumstance. And he uses his 230-pound frame to throw himself essentially into that defender, fall across the goal line, and suddenly BYU's down 3. They get another stop. BYU gets the ball back, go down the field, and then Jovessa Demouni, a 4-yard touchdown run in his own right, which showed, I think, a lot of the power that I think coaches maybe had question marks about with him. He throws himself across the goal line with a nice run, and suddenly BYU has found some answers in the running game. They have a lead, and they see the game out from that point. I really do think that was kind of the entire season for BYU has been games of this variety. This is their third comeback win, if I recall correctly, Colorado, Arizona, and this one where they've come back from double-digit deficits this season. And I really just I'm absolutely floored at the fact that BYU found some juice, because there's a whole lot of distractions out there with this BYU team. There's the looming situation with regards to the coaching staff. There's a looming situation with the transfer portal. You already had a handful of BYU Cougars announce that they're leaving the program and heading into the portal. They had a full week of bowl festivities, 3 theme park trips. They went to Disney World, Universal Studios, and one other theme park I can't remember off the top of my head during this week-long celebration down there with the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And Pop-Tarts Bowl in and of itself, they showed that this is a game that it's got a whole lot going on. There's a whole lot of sideshowness to it, because you have the mascots playing all kinds of games in between the action on the field. But the nice part was the game in the end measured up, I think, to exactly what the Pop-Tarts Bowl, I think, would have wanted it to be, with 2 teams duking it out and BYU putting together a fourth quarter comeback that shows exactly what this BYU football program is made of, and really kind of epitomizes what the culture that Kalani Sitake has built with the BYU football program. It's fairly remarkable what this BYU team has done this. And okay, McKay makes a good point here. Bear said, jump on, we are winning this. And yeah, it kind of was that. Bear Bachmeier essentially put the team on his back and really led BYU to this win. But I also, he doesn't do it without the other guys around him. Think about a guy like Carson Ryan, for example. A lot of you out there, and I don't blame you one bit, have been pining for BYU to throw the ball more to the tight ends. Carson Ryan ends up with his finest game in a Cougar uniform, 8 receptions, lead BYU in terms of total receptions, 120 yards on 11 targets, had 68 yards after catch in terms of the yak yardage. That's what you want to see from BYU tight ends if you want to see the BYU tight end be a bigger part of BYU's offense. Chase Roberts in his final game as a Cougar, 7 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown in his own right. And then Parker Kingston, who had some incredible punt returns, also has 5 receptions for 76 yards. And it shows exactly what BYU can do in the passing game, because Bear Bachmeier, 38 attempts in this game. He went 27 of 38 for 325 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Yes, the interception was a glaring miscue on his part to throw that ball when it was a really low success rate on that one. But his QB rating of 146.3, a completion percentage of 71%. Those are winning numbers. And oh, by the way, he also went over 3,000 yards passing for the season in this game. So I don't know what the future holds for BYU, because as one person told me in the lead up to this game, the quote, I'd have to pull it up. I'll find it in a minute, maybe when we're getting towards the back half of this podcast, was things could get crazy post game. I think that's the direct quote I got from a person associated with BYU. And so, yeah, a lot of fun to be had from BYU in this game. And I think that was kind of the message, I'm sure, for Kalani Sitake. I hope, and we'll see if when the cut comes out, if it shows what his pregame speech was. But I would hope that he walked into that locker room and told the guys, hey, I know you guys are on social media. I know you've got agents and coaches and parents and family members all around you who are telling you this and that and whatever. Ignore all of it. Let's go out there for one final time as this iteration of the BYU football program, and let's see what we can do. And that's exactly what BYU did in this game. I think they were able to block out the noise. And yes, it took until the fourth quarter, and it took a comeback effort for BYU. But it showed, I think, exactly what this BYU football program is all about and what they're made of. This is a team, speaking of BYU, that they don't go down lightly, even though it felt like it might have been because towards the tail end of that third quarter, in my opinion, I thought BYU, to use the boxing analogy, was staggering a bit. But as one person told me, I didn't know that. I didn't know this until they texted me. Apparently, BYU had between the third and fourth quarter, they played one of the songs. I'm going to pull up the text here and see if I can get what song it was. Let's see. So the quote was, between the third and fourth quarter, they had the crowd vote on Turbulence, aka BYU song, and Crazy Train, which is a Georgia Tech song. They played Turbulence as the place went nuts. And he said the vibes, this was during the game, have been insane since. As a person down at the game. So, hey, maybe Turbulence did the trick for BYU in this game, and they turn it around and collect their 12th win in the victory. I got some other players I want to highlight in terms of guys that stood out to me in this game that we'll get to momentarily. We'll also get to your guys' comments as well. And apparently I'm looking at the chat here as I'm talking about this. We've got a discussion going back and forth with Pop-Tarts and Crumble in terms of which one's better. Hey, you guys can argue that if you want in the chat, but all the same, we'll continue to break this down. I got some thoughts, like I said, on how the game played out, what I want to see now moving forward for BYU into an offseason that could feature quite a bit of change if the rumors are to be believed. And we'll get into all that next as this postcast edition of Locked On Cougars rolls on. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like college football. Now for BYU, it's officially over, but the tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all, the worst part about it is, despite all the energy, the bands, the momentum, moments you'll always remember forever, the worst part can be getting your tickets. And if you are going to other bowl games, think about going to the college football playoff, etc., that can be the frustrating part with long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. But Game Time is here to change the game when it comes to that. That's why Game Time gives you the advantage as the fan. It is the easiest way to unlock your amazing college football ticket opportunities and experiences in just a few taps. My favorite part about the Game Time app, and any of you who are everydayers know I mention this a lot when I do this ad, is I love the fact that they have the prices that are all in terms of the ticket fees and the like, the taxes, right up front. You're not getting to the checkout screen, suddenly the price jumps, and you're like, what in the world just happened? They also have zone deals. You pick the section, they pick the seats, and you save even more along the way. And the best part is the app is super simple and easy to use. I've used it multiple times myself, and I want you guys to give it a shot as well. So take a guesswork out of buying your college football tickets and do it with our friends at Game Time. The best part is you can go to Game Time, download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply against the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And thank you once again for making the Locked On Podcast Network America's #1 sports podcast network. Now, if you are a true everydayer and you want to prove it, you can join the Everydayer Club, which we have now with the Locked On Cougars podcast. Get you ad-free audio feeds for all things Locked On Cougars. It's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Get you an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which features a group chat just for listeners of this show. It's more like kind of what Twitter used to be in social media before, algorithms and the like changed. So go to lockedoncougars.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more and become a member of the Locked On Cougars Everydayer Club. All right, so BYU gets a big win over Georgia Tech, obviously, and I hope that it's not lost on BYU what they accomplished in this game. And I think that going into this offseason, there could be a whole lot of change for BYU. Once again, like if the rumors are to be are true, because we've seen reports from CBS Sports and other outlets that Jay Hill is among, if not the favorite, to potentially join Kyle Whittingham at Michigan. There's been rumors about other coaches on the staff maybe looking at other opportunities as well. And in time, those will all become very clear. But I think the one constant I will always think back on with this BYU football program is that Kalani Sitake, he's locked in for the long term. Now, I also acknowledge that losing coordinators, especially the caliber of Jay Hill, would be a major blow for BYU. And that will obviously be a conversation point if Jay Hill does indeed leave this football program. But the one thing is, Kalani Sitake has proven, I think of his last 3 coordinator hires. If you think back, and it's been a minute since he's had to hire a new offensive coordinator and the like, but think back, he fired Ty Detmer, brings in Jeff Grimes, and he also brought in Aaron Roderick at the same time as the passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Jeff Grimes was there for 3 seasons. I thought had quite a bit of success, all things considered, for BYU. Then they moved to Aaron Roderick, and despite what you may think of A-Rod and what he's done, all he's produced is multiple NFL quarterbacks and multiple double-digit win seasons alongside Kalani Sitake. And then when Elisa Tuiaki was let go and obviously moved along, he brings in Jay Hill. I think Kalani Sitake, despite what some may fear with regards to the future for the BYU football program is, I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt for us to trust that he, if he is needing to, can go out and find adequate replacements for this football program. And there's a bit of a misnomer out there that if Jay Hill leaves, BYU is going to sink back to winning 7 and 8 games. Kalani Sitake won 10 plus games without Jay Hill. I'm not saying it's going to be easy because this is the Power 4 level versus what previously BYU was as an independent. BYU has had success without Jay Hill on the staff. And once again, the track record of Kalani's last 3 coordinator hires tell me that I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt for us to trust that he will find an adequate replacement if and when that needs to happen. And we'll have plenty of coverage as we do, because this is a daily venture with this podcast, but that does not take away anything from what this BYU team accomplished, especially today in this game. It's a phenomenal comeback for BYU. And when he said I should be smiling more, I don't know. I'm smiling. I don't know. It's just, it's a really, really fun game. And I can tell you that this team, they're going to celebrate this game hard. And because I think the chief thing is, you're seeing a big changing the guard with the BYU roster. Think of guys like Chase Roberts. He's been in this program for 5 seasons. He joined BYU in 2020, if I recall correctly. So he was a part of that team that obviously had that incredible run during the pandemic year. He went through 2021, 2022, 23, 24, and 25. Like, think of what guys these guys have accomplished in their BYU careers, like a Chase Roberts, even a guy like Carson Ryan in just his lone season as a BYU Cougar. That's the really fun part, is a lot of these guys are moving on from this program, but leaving it in a whole lot better place than they found it. And that does not discount the fact there's a lot of young talent for BYU, and a lot of it was on display in this game. Jack Kelly couldn't play in this game. So who do they insert at linebacker, kind of playing a hybrid role like Jack plays? Nusi Taumue-Apeo. And remember, Nusi was a guy who signed with Stanford, and then when the Troy Taylor situation went down, asked for a release from his national letter of intent from the Cardinal, signs with BYU as a kid from Westlake High School, just a stone's throw away from where I live here in Utah. He leads BYU in tackles in this game. 6 of them, 6 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 3 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble, which he almost like kicked out. And it wasn't an intentional kick. His foot just kicked the ball out, and it was a big turnover in the moment for BYU. Now, it did end with Bear Bachmeier having a turnover of his own at the end of that drive, but I thought the young talent for BYU was on full display with Nusi out there, Falatau Satuwala, 6 tackles, 4 of them solo, 1 pass breakup, 1 quarterback hit. Isaiah Glasker, who has a decision to make in his own right, also tied for the team high with 6 total tackles, 3 of them assisted. So you have both kind of the old guard, Tanner Wall, for example, all first conference team safety, 5 tackles, 4 of them solo in his final game as a Cougar. But you also have some young talent, like I said, Nusi Taumue-Apeo, Falatau Satuwala, who show that the future for BYU, if they can hold on to these guys, because the transfer portal is always a wild ride, is that, yes, the old guard's going out, leaving BYU in a great spot, but the young talent is also coming and showing what it's capable of. And that's headlined, like I said, by Nusi Taumue-Apeo, by a freshman quarterback in Bear Bachmeier, etc. This BYU football program shows a lot of the continuity you like to see for a program that has enjoyed some pretty incredible success. If you look at kind of the totality of the past 2 years for BYU, they won 11 games a year ago. They won 12 games this year. They're 23-4 in the past 2 seasons. And yes, would you have liked to have seen them hoist a Big 12 championship trophy? Yes, you would have liked to have seen that. Would you have liked to have seen them been rewarded with a college football playoff berth? Yeah, absolutely. We'd all would have liked to have seen that play out for BYU, but does not take away the success that BYU has had at the highest level of football they've literally ever played at in their program's history. So if they go into this offseason, and there's always intrigue with the offseason of what change and what changes could come, but I do think it's going to be a program headlined by, first and foremost, Kalani Sitake, who has shown that he knows exactly what BYU needs, and I trust that he will set them up for success no matter what the future may hold for the BYU football program, even if Jay Hill does leave, even if some players do decide to leave with Jay Hill or decide just to leave of their own volition and go into the transfer portal. I like what BYU's built here. I think the base is very, very strong. And the fact that BYU went head-to-head with a blue blood, the caliber of Penn State, and kept Kalani Sitake in place, that shows that BYU is serious about football. There have been times that I can think of in not too recent past where I've seriously questioned if BYU was serious about really investing in this football program. And I think what we saw play out here with Kalani Sitake apparently getting somewhere in the realm of $8 or $9 million, becoming the second highest paid head coach in the Big 12, showed that BYU is indeed serious about playing high-level football. So we'll see what happens. And I do think that this offseason could feature quite a bit of change based on the rumblings I've heard. And any of you who are Locked On Cougars Insider Group members, you got a text pregame that told you everything I know about how things looked pregame. I'll be sure to pass along anything I learn in the aftermath of this one. But once again, it doesn't take away anything from the accomplishment BYU did this season, and in particular this game, because I think this game, once again, epitomized a lot of what BYU has done all season long and really showed that there's a lot of good things going for the BYU football program, even if the changes that may or may not happen come to fruition here in the not too distant future. I think that Kalani Sitake, him being the constant, him knowing that he's locked in at BYU, and him being very vocal about wanting to be at BYU, yeah, I think that means that BYU is going to be in it to win it for quite some time. And yeah, even if Michigan does come calling and Kyle Whittingham does come calling, great. Even if other programs come sniffing around BYU, I think Kalani has earned, at least especially over the last two seasons, that there doesn't need to be a sense of panic for BYU. Change is inevitable. It's college football. In this era of college football, it's a near constant. But trust the fact that Kalani Sitake, he's got BYU on a good footing, and he will obviously do his absolute best to keep things rolling for the Cougars. So I really do think that things are really looking up for BYU. Psycho CD saying, "Hey, Jake, give me the waving hand emoji." Hi, CD. We even got some Ute fans in here. My good friend PNW Ute, he's making some good points in the chat as well. I love the fact that we can get along and have rival fans in the chat. So final stanza of this postcast. We're going to talk about what you guys want to talk about in terms of, we'll answer some questions with regards to what I know about Jay Hill, what I know about Aaron Roderick, what I know about what could happen for BYU going forward. So if you guys got questions on those, toss them in the chat, and I'll answer as many as I can in the time remaining, as well as just kind of some final thoughts on BYU after a thrilling 25-21 win, as BYU, according to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, is the People's National Champions. More in a moment, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Of course, Fridays already feel different during the basketball season, and FanDuel wants you guys to have fun every week during the basketball season as well. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives a new way to kick off the weekend with they're calling their NBA Happy Hour. It is your official pregame in a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts on Friday nights. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with the NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during happy hours brings something new. Boosts, bonuses, and surprises all right there in the app. It's easy to check on weekly specials before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. Timing is perfect right before the games tip off and right before the weekend starts. It adds an extra energy to Friday night basketball and without overthinking at it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's happening during NBA Happy Hour every Friday. Once again, from 6 to 7:30 Eastern time. That's 4 to 5:30 Mountain time if you're in Utah or on the West Coast. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, as they are the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And let me just say this, as this is the end of the BYU football season for 2025, December 27th. It's kind of crazy to think about how long ago this season started. But as I often say, football seasons for me, doing what I do in sports radio alongside this podcast, it feels like it's a marathon run at a sprinter's pace. And I get worn out by the end of the season. The nice part is you out there, BYU fans and otherwise, even those of you who may not be fans of the Cougars who are watching these and supporting the podcast and doing what you're doing, Big 12 fans, Utah fans and the like, you're the lifeblood of what makes me literally sit down every day and say, hey, I got to bring it for you guys. So just from the bottom of my heart, and I'm serious when I say this, thank you for your support of this podcast, because without you, this venture doesn't really exist in this circumstance. And it's the reason why I'm wearing a Cougar Tail crew neck sweatshirt from the Royal Blue tonight. I felt like it was appropriate considering the circumstance. We're talking about Pop-Tarts Bowl, BYU's iconic treat is the Cougar Tail. We're having conversations about crumble cookies in the chat. This is what I'm here for. This is what I enjoy. I'm obviously, I'm pretty analytical when it comes to this podcast. And Psycho CD says, me and my dad both listen to your podcast. I appreciate it. There was a BYU Idaho student that approached me without any volition when I was up at BYU Idaho for my younger brother's graduation. It said, Jake, I'm an everyday listener. And it's really cool that you guys enjoy this podcast as much as you do. And Kodiak Fishing for Friends. Okay, let's throw this up so you guys can see it. Jake, can you give us a big yee-haw? Love to hear you let one out. Hopefully I did it for you there, Kodiak Fishing. There you go. Got your yee-haw. So hopefully, M. Morris, I'm here for the cookies. Yeah, here's the thing. This is what sports is all about. Yeah, it's about the games, but there's also kind of the frivolity around all of it. And college football lends itself to that. But yeah, there you go. So I do think there's a lot going on. So let's, so if you got questions, let's start throwing them in the chat. If I missed them already, throw it back in the chat here. We'll answer these as kind of come along. First one for Braille's, throwing up here. One thing I am sure of is Witt's desire to stick it to BYU. The dude would willingly hurt himself if it meant also hurting BYU. I'm not exactly on board with him saying that he would hurt himself to spite BYU, speaking of Kyle Whittingham. But here's the thing. Kyle Whittingham wants to win. He wants to win at an extremely high level. And if guys like a Jay Hill, etc., can do that, yeah, he's going to bring them to Michigan with him, if at all possible. Good point here by Corey Erkenbrecht. I think BYU should hire Gary Anderson as a defensive coordinator if Jay Hill leaves. Gary is not a good head coach, but is an amazing defensive-minded coach. Now, here's what I understand about Gary Anderson's circumstance is that Gary really enjoys being essentially an analyst. He's able to coach on the field, but he doesn't have to deal with the recruiting aspects and all the other stuff that entails as a full-time assistant coach. So I'd be hard-pressed to think that Gary Anderson ends up as BYU's defensive coordinator, Corey. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen. I'm just saying from my vantage point, it's not likely to happen because he's kind of been tied at the hip with Jay Hill. And I think wherever Jay Hill goes, Gary Anderson is very likely to follow. Personal opinion on the matter. Psycho CD, what are the chances Jay Hill leaves right now? Decently high odds. I just do think there's too much smoke out there with regards to Jay Hill, the opportunity at Michigan. Think about it from this perspective. And I also do think that Jason Beck is the odds-on favorite. Personal opinion, I think Jason Beck's going to be the OC at Michigan. And if everything goes according to plan, personal opinion on the matter for me right now is that Jay Hill is defensive coordinator at Michigan. And you got to think of from their perspective. Kyle Whittingham just signed a 5-year deal. And if he finishes the full 5 years at Michigan, I, for one, will be surprised. But if he goes 3 or 4 years and they have the success that I think they all envision they could have at Michigan with the resources there, wouldn't one of those guys, Jason Beck or Jay Hill, be setting themselves up to be the heir apparent and potentially ending up as, the head coach of what could be at worst a top 10 job in all of college football? That's the thing about this is that it was, I think, a very interesting circumstance that these guys have to consider with going to Michigan is that they could be setting themselves up, whether it's at Michigan or otherwise, opening doors for themselves that literally could not be opened otherwise if you have success at Michigan. Good point here for PNW Ute. Witt is petty, but he's going to have it out for BYU unless he's playing them. I think that's the perfect epitome. PNW Ute, I think you nailed it. He doesn't have it out for BYU unless he's playing them because when he plays BYU, he's going for the jugular. Just look at that game this past year. He went for a fourth down almost in spite of himself because he wanted so badly to beat BYU and it actually hurt Utah in that circumstance. Rob Mack, what about Eric Weddle as a defensive coordinator at BYU? Well, if you paid attention to the Ute Blockcast spaces that Glass Half Ute Bennett had last night, Eric Weddle was on that spaces thing on X. And I think the direct quote was, if I coach in college football, it's going to be at Utah. He says, I'm not coaching anywhere else. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But I just don't see Eric Weddle being a ready-made defensive coordinator right now for BYU. Another good question here about Braille's MT says, is LJ back next year? I heard he took part in senior day activities. The timing of the surgery he had is right for the NFL, bad for the bowl game. Now, Kalani Sitake pointed it out that regardless of his decision, speaking of LJ, whether he goes pro or comes back, he said there was a small window for it not to affect whatever he decided, whether it was preparing for pro day and combine events or not being out for too long in the offseason to limit his availability for BYU next season in terms of preparation. So I think it was just a timing issue. And yes, it hurts for BYU in the bowl game. There's no doubt about it. But I think LJ, from my vantage point, I'd be hard-pressed to tell him not to go to the NFL. That's, once again, I'm not reporting that he's made that decision. I don't think he has. And if he has, if you've seen it on social media quite coming around while I've been on air, because I'm not on social media while I'm doing this show, but I do think that my personal opinion on the matter is LJ should chase that NFL money and a chance to be an NFL running back, because especially in the case, they use the NFL term not for long. It's kind of especially the case when it comes to NFL running backs. They're in many cases a dime a dozen, and getting that money while you can. And that hopefully should line up where he could, if he decides to go to the NFL, he should be fully healthy. Hopefully by the time the combine comes around, he can participate in those events, pro day type stuff with the Big 12, and then prepare himself for an NFL future. But even if he comes back, I do think that things are on the up and up for BYU, even though whether LJ comes back or not, I think priority number one for BYU is finding a lot of talent and a lot of depth via the transfer portal at the running back position. Because even though I thought Enoch Nawahine and Jovesa Dumuni had good showings in this game, neither one of them, I think, asserted themselves saying, hey, I'm the answer. And in the case of Enoch Nawahine, he couldn't have because he's a senior. But good point here. Good points across. Psycho CD, where do you think BYU will get their new defensive coordinator from, like BYU, or they get a DC from another place? I think there's options in-house, and there's also options on the outside. Think of guys like Justin Wilcox, who recently got let go by Cal as their head coach. He was an elite defensive coordinator before becoming a head coach at Cal. He could be an option. I think it's is it Kiwakowski, the former DC at Texas? Well, even though he got dumped in favor of Will Muschamp, he's a pretty highly regarded defensive coordinator in his own right. And I think the connection between Sark and BYU could obviously lend itself to a guy like Pete Kiwakowski potentially being an option if Jay Hill does leave BYU. So I think that's there are both in-house options, Justin Enna, Chad Kauha'a, Kelly Papinga, Gennaro Guilford, who could all be elevated to that position. But I do think that there are also outside options, considering BYU is a Power 4 program and they have Power 4 money. It should be attractive to bringing guys in from the outside if Kalani Sitake opts for that point. Good question here from BYU FTB. Does Tanu Vasa stay? It's a good question. I am inclined to think that he will stay, but he did tell me, if any of you are longtime everydayers, remember, think back to Big 12 Media Days. He told me on the record, on a video and an interview I played on this podcast, that he was planning on a 1-year stop at BYU. Does his play on the field match, I think, what he envisioned at that point? I wouldn't think so, but who knows? I would think he's inclined to stay. Personal opinion on the matter here. When does McKay Madsen get back from his mission from our good friend Dave Webb? Madsen is out right now. I think he's got at least another year remaining. So I think he's not doing the Rider Lions deal in the 1-year mission. But that's going to be another year there. Nate Crowley, what if A-Rod leaves? Could Harvey or Fessy step up? I don't think Harvey would. I think Fessy, with his offensive coordinator experience at Weber State, is an option. But much like the conversation about the DC side of things, just barely, let's say A-Rod were to leave, you could attract other offensive coordinators from the outside. They've gone outside before and brought Jeff Grimes back from Baylor to be BYU's offensive coordinator. So you can go out there and find guys on the outside. And then I think the final question we'll say, leave it here on. We'll wrap it up because we're getting over time here. David McKenzie, where does this rank in overall seasons at BYU? Well, I thought last year, in my opinion, was a top 5 season in BYU football history, considering they're a Power 4 program. They had never played that many Power 4 opponents. They put together an 11-win season, capped off by the Alamo Bowl win. But this year, you made a run to the Big 12 title game. You won one more game than last year. So if I thought last year was a top 5 season, how can I take away this season from being a top 5 season? I think the number 1 season still, because of the hardware it boasts, is 1984, that national championship. But 96, in my opinion, is number 2. I think 3 and 4 could be these back-to-back seasons right here, 24 and 25. Think about how many good teams BYU has played in terms of Power 4 level opposition the last 2 seasons, and all they've done is put together a 23 and 4 mark. Pretty impressive stuff for BYU, and we'll see how it all pans out with the offseason to come. But as always, thank you for all your support. I think we capped out at 300 plus concurrent viewers on this postcast edition of the show. Many more of you, I'm sure, will watch it when it is available in the what we talk about the on-demand feature in terms of YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. But if you don't mind, please, right now, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a little thumbs up icon right down here. Click it. It's the like button. It obviously helps the algorithm show that, hey, Cougar fans enjoy this content. And if you're watching this in the aftermath, subscribe, rate and review, share it with your family and friends this holiday season. And as always, please consider becoming a member of the Locked On Everydayer Club and being a part of the Locked On Cougars family. We've got a great thing going here on Locked On Cougars. And no matter what the offseason holds, we're going to have it covered for you guys all off-season long. Oh, good point by BYU fan bro. Hans announced, seeing Hans Olsen, that Tonavasa is returning. So there you go. Maybe that's your answer. Keanu Tonavasa coming back to BYU. So ignore everything I just said, because apparently that came across in the post-game press conference, or at least a post-game show with Kalani Sitake. So as always, truthfully, thank you for all your support. It's been an incredible season, but fun doesn't stop here. We got BYU basketball to cover. We got all the offseason hoopla that football entails with the transfer portal, coaching carousel, and we will have it all covered for you guys right here on the podcast. So as always, thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Go make Locked On College Football your second listen of the day, and we'll catch you guys again soon right here on Locked On Cougars.